I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I come from a background of absolutely unfiltered live performance. I mean, there are gatekeepers when you work in the live area, and this the festival that's happening at the moment in this city is in a process of introspection about how those gatekeepers can either be circumnavigated or have a kind of cultural and systemic change. My experience of it's not even as pernicious as outright prejudice. There is simply an assumption that the default is a southern middle class cisgendered heterosexual white man, and it's not even that. A lot of the time when you communicate with gatekeepers, it's not even that they are actively trying to keep those numbers. It's just an assumption of the default, and everything else is a deviation from the norm. And so the problem with that is that you sort of end up in this situation with a very homogenous culture, and there is an assumption that those are the correct, and I mean, I think something that has worked, and it was crudely handled, I think, at the time, but something that has worked in terms of a discernible cultural shift in the cultural television comedy was in 2014, an edict was issued by the BBC that insisted that the comedy panel shows have one woman on them, right? Which, in retrospect, is...
It's just laughable.
Well, you say that. Several of my male colleagues, for want of a better term, lost their fucking minds. Like, absolutely.
Be Dorothy. Be Dorothy.
Yeah,
name names.
I mean, to be honest, there's a couple of them that I'd rather not dignify by giving them a publicity boost for their dog shit careers by mentioning them. But people lost their minds. Now, what you're now seeing is, and it was crudely handled, and it put a lot of the first wave of women that went onto those shows in a really difficult position and put them in the firing line. The culture has now shifted, and now it would be, it would sort of be considered unacceptable to have a comedy panel show without a single woman on them. Now, that hasn't fixed everything, but you can start to see the signs of progress, and it is those kind of interventionist things those measures that need to be taken. Now, sometimes on Mock the Week, there are 2 women. Yes. Frankly, I feel swamped sometimes. But you can start to see the shift in the culture.
But it's so incremental, isn't it? There's no big bang in Cat.
No.
I think the difficulty is for the broadcasters is that they've got to keep delivering. They've got to have audiences. They've got to have the income coming in. So at the moment, we're in a period of transition. But I found the session with Ian Katz yesterday really exciting. I genuinely did. I thought I could see he's halfway through doing something. And appointing people like Joe Street, who's been one of the best commissioners out of London for a long time, is just fantastic as head of daytime. What a brilliant appointment. The BBC are obviously gutted.
Well, the BBC now don't have senior commissioners. Okay, obviously Fiona Campbell is just a joy, but you don't have the senior commissioners. Craig has gone from Scotland. Joe Street's gone from Scotland. Where are the senior people that are going to be there who have both the clout and also,
What do you mean at the BBC?
Yeah.
I think what will happen, Channel 4 is brilliant because it provides genuine competition to the BBC in every way. Once the plan at Channel 4 is actually executed and we have the commissioners outside London, which is so crucial, along with the Ofcom changes when they come through, so people have actually got to create jobs outside London, which is what the law requires, then what will happen is that the BBC will have to have commissioners outside London. And obviously...
Well, I want to talk to Ashley.
Clearly, I'm already happening.
But Ashley, this whole, you must be aware of the kind of southern male white bubble that has existed.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, and so what can you do radically to change it? And what will your job? How do you reflect the whole of England to England? That because the gatekeepers are the key people, and you have utter commissioning freedom.
Yeah, I mean, utter commissioning freedom as long as I can get my hands on as much money as possible. But obviously, I have money and will have money. And but I think what I'm interested in is talking about what I want to do. And I think, for a start, it's about how you tell stories. So when I was in Panorama, if I can give one example, I was doing a film out of Aleppo, and I was really tired of seeing children covered in blood and dust because I thought it was a dehumanizing way of seeing people. And actually what I wanted to do was tell a story that was about resilience and see people in their homes and understand. I think you understand people better when you're not seeing a kind of a narrative which everyone's got really used to, which is quite dehumanized. And so in terms of telling stories from England and in terms of what I want to do, a different lens, different people telling them, but different people being allowed to tell them in their own way.
But different people having access to be the storytellers. I mean, we all know that one of the kind of hidden things in terms of broadcasting is class.
Yes, and so class for me is really critical. I live in Hastings. There's quite a lot of antagonism to the BBC, I would say, when I walk around and chat to people.
Right.
You know,
On what basis? What do people say?
They just criticise the BBC for being metropolitan, for not really understanding what it's like to live in somewhere like Hastings. So for me, you know, the southern white bubble thing is quite interesting because Hastings is in the south, but there are poor bits of the south as well. I don't like talking about class particularly because I don't really like differentiating people according to what, money or some kind of arbitrary. But
they don't get into the BBC or ITV or the broadcast often.
But I am going to talk about it because my kids have gone to state school. They've grown up with lots of young white kids whose parents are working 3 jobs. I do think that we could tell the stories of people who are white and working class a lot better. Everyone knows that white working class boys do incredibly badly at school, or at least a lot of them do. A lot of them sort of fall out of the educational system at 16. So, you know, I'm interested in telling everyone's stories, but I'm interested in changing who gets to tell their stories. But I do think it's not just about BAME, it's also about class.
Cherylee.
Can I start by giving you a few statistics from my community? Because I'm from a community that goes across all those communities, and I think you're totally right, it's about changing the culture, the mindset. Because in the 80s, my community, I would have been locked up in a care home because of the amount of care I need now, support, whereas actually I'm working, I'm contributing to society. I didn't have a right to go to university when I went to university. That was disabled people had no rights to higher education until the year 2000. It was only in the 90s we had the right to get on public transport. If I was on public transport on a train in the 90s, at night I'd be in a guard's van without a light. So we've come a long way, do you know what I mean? But we're here in
the only room, in the EICC that will take a wheelchair on stage. What about that?
And this was built 20 years ago. So the thing is, we're challenging an awful lot of things, but it's getting to the critical point where I feel actually our industry, we've got a responsibility now because there's a whole generation coming up who are educated, who are, we're fighting so many different fights, but our stories aren't on the news, we're not represented back. We're 19% of the population. 19% of the UK have a disability, physical, hidden, mental learning, all those different things, and it's never on our screens. And I do a lot of work with young disabled people, and their lives are never reflected back, which means you have no role models, and there's so richness of stories to be told. Do you know what I mean? But what we did was we came together as a load of disabled artists and set up DANC, the Disabled Artists Network community, because on screen, 3% of representation of ITV, most of it's me. BBC, I think it's nearly 4%. When they took Family Guy off, it went down 1%. That's a cartoon. In film, we're under 1%. Do you know, why are we, disabilities across all communities, but it's not shown. And the thing is what it is, it's really interesting creatively.
Yeah. But do you think people that supposedly are able-bodied, and that's obviously completely, find it difficult to even have conversations?
We've just launched today through DANC, if you look up the hashtag label-bodied, because we set up DANC, Disabled Artists Network Community. The theory is we go into a mainstream arts organisation every 2 months, we get industry guests, we get disabled artists to come, we network, and it's a solution-focused response. So we've had 10 meetings, we've had 450 people with disabilities travel from Portsmouth, Plymouth, Glasgow, somebody flew from Canada, from Italy, because there's nothing like this. Because it's about, all the incentives are always done for us rather than led by us, and we've got that knowledge. And what I found over the 20 years of my career was people kept going, we don't know where to find you. I had 12 TV credits on my CV before I got an agent. The whole industry is a massive catch-22. So what we're trying to do as disabled artists, we come together is go, right, let's try and address all areas of the industry.
But I just want to interrupt because you've got a great example from Russell T Davies.
Russell T Davies from A Conversation at DANC. rewrote years and years to have a disabled character, to have Ruth's character. What he did, and this is the thing I think our industry goes, right, we need to write a disabled character. Disability isn't a personality trait. it's, do you know what I mean? Stop, and this is what we've learned through Dank, is stop trying to write us, because actually write the character and we will fill it in. Do you know what I mean? I can be any of those characters, but what it will do is I have different access requirements, which means what I do will make it different. You know, so that's the creative interest. But what Russell did was he went back to Nicola at Red and said, from this conversation with Cherylee, I want to do that. What they did then was audition loads of different disabled actresses, picked Ruth, and then Russell talked through the script with Ruth and went, where would this impact? Where do those changes need to be? And I think Mike Bartlett's just doing the same thing with Melissa Johns. And it's this ripple, because it's just... in a way, what we decided to do, we've now got a database of 450 artists where you can come and find us, come and ask us those questions. It needs to be a conversation together now, because people keep reinventing the wheel and then stop. So, you know, that's
where you are.